It being a little after 6 p.m., I'll go ahead and call the November 20th, 2018 Winnebago County Board of Supervisors to order. If all members could please press their attend buttons, and if all could silence any cell phones. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by Supervisor Locke. If you could please stand. Supervisor Locke.
We are meeting tonight to conduct matters of importance, guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought and speech, so that we may reach a successful conclusion. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Amen.
Thank you, Supervisor Locke. Next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda for this evening. I'll call on Supervisor Roble.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move for the approval of this evening's agenda.
There's a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now is the time in the meeting where we offer time for anyone from the public who wishes to speak on any item on the agenda this evening or anything under the jurisdiction of the county. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Please, sir, you can step right up to the mic in front of you, and if you could please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Donnie Burke. I live at 820 Dove Street here in Oshkosh. I'm here in person to reinforce the email I sent to everyone regarding the alternative proposed locations for the community garden. In case you didn't have a chance to read it or look at it, I could just quickly summarize. It was using Google Maps. I quickly documented that there are roughly 16 locations that provide over 150 acres that could be very easily converted from either underutilized, undeveloped, or non-used land into a community garden very, very easily. And I guess I should preface by saying I do have a personal interest in the land being sought. I believe it's on the agenda as the update to the property that the Netzers own. That's 770 Sunnyview Road. I've been trying to acquire this property since early September, but I've been competing with some entity that keeps verbally outbidding my formal offers. And I should also highlight that I'm not opposed to a community garden of any sort. In fact, I think it's a great idea. I just think that as the supervisors, you should look at the most financially prudent method to go about making that happen. But I also wanted to say maybe it's a bit of a reach to say it's a moral question as well, but there's a family, my wife, my wife and 6 kids. This is the property that we want to live at for the rest of our lives. And so if this property is acquired simply for the purpose of expanding the existing park system, you're doing so simply, you're taking my future off the plate simply to grab more land. So I just wanted to make that point, and like I'm saying, I'm not against the community garden. I'm not against any progress with the community parks system. I just don't think that it's in the best interest of the public finances to acquire this property and any future incurred costs that go with that. So I was told, well, last time I sensed that someone had a question for me but wasn't offered it. I can answer any questions if you have them. Otherwise, that's all I really had to say was this is my plea to forego any land acquisition. I'm not much of a public speaker, so I apologize for the emotion at this point, but thank you for your time. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on any item on the agenda or any issue under county jurisdiction? I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Then we'll go ahead and close that portion of the agenda, and we'll move right down to correspondence, resolutions from other counties, and notices of claim. I'll call on Clerk Ertner.
Yes, we have a notice of claim from AT&T for damages caused to one of their cables when the highway department was digging out for a culvert, and that will be referred to the Personnel and Finance Committee. And you have one resolution from Jackson County requesting increased funding and oversight reforms for Wisconsin's Child Protective Services System. I know this has already gone to the Legislative Committee, but we'll forward it there as well.
Thank you.
That's all.
Moving on to the next agenda item, that's reports from committees, commissions, and boards. Is there anyone who has any reports from committees, commissions, and boards? I'll call on Vice Chairman Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There will be no legislative meeting for December or January. So just so you know it, I should say there will be in January. November or December we will not have any. It seemed like the group don't care about talking about other resolutions coming in from other counties so much, but I think we will have some important ones coming up in January. I know we had a couple that we, we talked about last time, but both of them said they could hold off until January. And we have something very important I think is going to be coming up for our own counties. So January we'll plan to have one. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Egan. Next speaker is Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a comment to the rest of the board and to Rob Way on the County Parks Department. I met a young woman this past month with a new rescue puppy, and how happy she was to have her dog, and she had taken it to the dog park. I said, "Oh, what do you think of the dog park?" She says, "This is the best dog park I don't think I've ever been to." I moved here from the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, and she said the dog parks there are probably an eighth the size of what we have, and she loved the dog park. Her dog loved the dog park, and I want to thank the Parks Department and Rob and his committee for a great dog park. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Powers. Next speaker is Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a report on the DOT Freight Rail Conference I attended last week in Madison, Monday and Tuesday. The primary outcome of that conference was the development of freight rail and expanding it in Wisconsin. Now, one of the things that was important in the conference is that freight rail is going to be using with the port system, with the ports at Green Bay and down on Lake Michigan, all the way down to Milwaukee, and that it's going to be an international hub. In other words, freight containers from all over the world, whether they're China or Europe, using the St. Lawrence Seaway, will be coming into Wisconsin and delivering the container freight to be picked up by trucks. This will reduce the amount of trucking and the amount of rail from coast to coast, because we'll be shortening it by the Wisconsin center. So this is something we've got to look forward to, and for people on the highway, they can look forward to seeing a few less trucks. And the other side of this, of course, is that it'll also save a lot of money, because the closer you get to home, the less it costs to transport it.
Very good. Thank you, Supervisor Smith. Next speaker is Supervisor Warnke.
I just want to call your attention to the report that was put in there in your packet today by the Veteran Service Office. It's very good reading, and it is a big success story, and I encourage you to read it. What this office brings into this county is unbelievable, and it continues to go up. So make sure that you look it over at least and look at the numbers, because the return is unbelievable. So it not only helps the veterans, but it helps the economy in Winnebago County. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Warnke. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll move on to the next agenda item, and that is the approval of the proceedings from the October 16th County Board meeting and the October 29th through 30th, 2018 budget sessions. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion, changes? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So moving right on down to the county executive's report and county executive's appointments. Executive Harris?
Thank you. I also want to call attention to the report from the Veteran Service Office. And Winnebago County invests a little bit more in the Veteran Service Office than other counties do, but with very successful results. The benefits that that office helps connect veterans with is about $65 million. And if you count the federal home loan programs, well over $100 million. So that really is worth a quick read, and you can see how successful the County Veteran Service Office really is. So it's an investment that's very well worth making. As is my custom, I usually call attention to at least one item on tonight's agenda. It's an item that we've talked about before, but in resolution actually I have my glasses on here, 062 112018. That's to authorize a transfer of $186,900 from the undesignated general fund to the Sheriff's Department capital outlay. That's for upgrading the command and control stations and the PLC processor that we talked about at a prior meeting, where that system is failing, and it's essential to maintain control of the jail. So I certainly would hope that the board would support that enthusiastically.
And just for clarification, because I see some question marks, that's resolution 082 on your agenda tonight, so that's item number 5.
I have a number of appointments tonight. I have reappointments to the Grievance Review Board. That's John Nichols and Brenda Keller.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Then all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
I have 4 reappointments to the Human Service Board: James Kozakowski, Larry Lautenschlager, Jerry Finch, and Karen Powers.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
I have 6 appointments to the Local Emergency Planning Commission: Michael Erdman, Emily Springstroh, Doug Guerin, Larry Smith, Allison Vaccaro, and Mike Rohrcast.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And I have 2 reappointments to the Veterans Service Commission: Bob Warnke and Tom Schneider.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And I have 2 appointments and a reappointment and an appointment to the Winnefox Library System Board of Trustees: Elizabeth Eisen and Deanne Rangsdorf.
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. With one abstention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Harris. Moving on down to the County Board Chairman's Report. First, I just wanted to let you know that Supervisor Weiss asked to be excused tonight. Supervisor Gabert also asked to be excused tonight. She did give me permission to give you a brief update in regards to her. And approximately a week and a half ago, she did have a heart procedure. So she had heart surgery. It went very well for her, however, and she is recovering quite well. I spoke to her over the weekend. Vice Chairman Egan spoke to her as well today. And even in those 2 days since myself speaking with her and Vice Chairman Egan, she's improved even more in those days. So the recovery is going well. Also wanted to let you know, I sent out an email, and I appreciate Clerk Ertmer for forwarding it, in regards to Supervisor Wallen asked to step down from the Information Systems Committee. So I will look to having a recommendation on the agenda in December to fill that vacancy for you. Also wanted to remind you of the Christmas party. Forwarded that in an email yesterday as well. So that is December 17th. All of you should have an invitation on your desk. So that's the Monday immediately prior to our December business meeting, and certainly hope as many of you as possible can make it. And then I also wanted to say certainly happy Thanksgiving to everyone. It's Thanksgiving this week, as we all, of course, know. And, as I think about so many things that I have to be thankful for, certainly on this board, I'm thankful for the opportunity, frankly, to do what I get to do with you all over these last 6 months. So I just want to truly thank you for giving me that opportunity. I really do mean that. I also wanted to take the opportunity to thank the veterans and the veterans on this board, because as you all know, it was Veterans Day just approximately a week or so ago, and there's a resolution later on in this agenda in regards to that. But what I'd ask is if the veterans of this board could please stand. I think we all owe them certainly. Please, thank you. I do that for two reasons. Well, obviously to thank you, but honestly, I wanted to know which other of our membership are veterans. I knew of some of you as membership were veterans. Honestly, I did not know that we had as many veterans on this board as I now do now. So truly, thank you for all you've done in service to our country. And that concludes my report. So moving on down, the next item on the agenda is the update on the Netzer property from our Parks Director, Rob Way. And so, as you all know, at the budget, there was a resolution or a motion to add something to the budget, and we had postponed that to this meeting, and that was to postpone for an update and actually to have a resolution potentially voted on tonight. However, he'll provide an update that gives you better for clarification. So please, Director Way.
You bet. Thank you. This is likely to be one of the shortest stays I've had up at this podium. There isn't a great deal to go over. However, it is a item that circumstances have changed since last we brought this forward about 3 weeks ago. It is now in a situation where it is a property where our offer has been obviously turned down, so to speak, because circumstances did change with it. It was predicated on a date. So that nullifies our offer. And as the gentleman back there did point out, I'm not sure if there's an offer to purchase that has come forward with the Burke family. I'm not privy to a great deal of information that's coming out of the real estate agent. I have been working with her quite a bit prior to this, but I think it's in a situation where now we're kind of cut off from that information. She doesn't want to get into a conflict of interest. So what I do have is simply that we are on the sidelines, so to speak. It would all depend on how the transaction turns out between the Burke family and the Netzers. So what I do want to remind you of are some of the reasons, though. I think it's appropriate I bring up the reasons why we're looking at that property. Something for you to consider. They're important for the functions of the Expo Center. And they were included in the amendment that you had, but I'm still going to go over them. And chief among them, because of its location along East County Road Y, more towards the east end of the Expo, and where it sits in relation to the new property we purchased. If you recall, there's another section of the Netzer property to the north. This property would allow us access to that back portion. Access on to East County Road Y is at a premium. You can't just create your own access. So this is important. It's probably one of the only opportunities we would have to get a direct line from East County Road Y back to that 20-acre property. This is important for a couple reasons, not just for the programming, the promoters who might have programs going out that far, whether it's a big concert or otherwise. It's important for EMS and law enforcement as well, because as an alternative, if you're familiar with the Expo, the one route we do have that's closest is a small single-lane road that runs through a chief programming area for camping and parking to involve EMS, law enforcement with having to go up that road with all the barriers that we have when programming is going on. If you've been out there during Life Fest, this is a hodgepodge of movement up that 11-acre area. This would allow them a whole different access, one quickly, safely, straight up to the back portion of the Expo. So it was for safety reasons that we were concerned with acquiring that property for the access. Next was to avoid some of the conflict that could evolve with a party that could purchase that property, that perhaps it's not conducive to have such the disruptive nature. Okay, the expo does have events at it that are loud. A lot of traffic, a lot of activity does take place during the summer, and that probably is going to go up a notch or two with the type of programming we may get into the stadium. We are likely to get into the stadium with those large concerts, so it's going to reverberate out, and we're looking to avoid the conflict of, say, a subdivision of sorts coming into that property. Also, we're looking to, this is an important one for me especially, eliminate the conflict of having parking and activities taking place in the community park. You may not be aware of it, but through all the years with Country USA in particular, and even with Life Fest, people do take exception to the use of the community park for parking and how it's disruptive. They like that park. They see it as their own. They are citizens. It does count. Their opinion does count. And if we could put parking, try to bring it all over on the north side of East County Road Y, which this property would open up another tract, allowing parking to be brought over there, not entirely, but it would ease up some of this conflict with programming in the community park. And also it would allow for kind of an easing of the safety concerns we have with people constantly crossing East County Road Y. Now, I don't want to say we would eliminate the parking in the park, but we certainly could ease it up quite a bit. Also, there is the extension with the community garden, the need for that. I don't want to address that too much. That'd be better for those folks to talk about, but it does create an opportunity for some of that property to be utilized for the community garden in the front section of it. It would be conducive with our operations as well. It would not harm it. The two could go hand in hand. And finally, there is, we faced a situation this summer in particular with all the wet grounds we had out on the expo. We did manage to get by with juggling camping, parking, and so forth. A lot of our area is flat, collects water, holds water. And when you start ripping it up with parking and with access lanes going over the same wet ground, causes issues. It causes issues not just then for other programs as well that come in later. We're constantly having to patch it up. We have those problems because we're not able to flip the grounds, to cancel the wet areas, get whole new areas activated. This would allow us to kind of have a spare change, so to speak, on the backside where we do have that allowance to move things around. We did get by, barely, because we opened up the stadium, took that whole front area. It did alleviate things, but as things grow, as we get into this large concert with a lot of parking, possibly up to 30, 35,000 people on site, it could become a problem. So the intent was that we have this is to be able to utilize as needed. So it right now, just to return to what we were talking about with the circumstances as they stand, we literally are in a holding pattern. I don't have a great deal of information to share with you other than that we sit on the sideline. It's up to the Parks Committee and the county executive to direct me if we're going to pursue the property further. So that is in limbo, that I have to be reestablished, so this may or may not even come before the board one way or the other. But I'll be sure to update if it does get sold, it will come to a conclusion. I'll inform the board of that at that point in time. So I don't know if this is a Q&A at this point.
I see we have one question, so I'll give an opportunity to Supervisor Ellis.
Thank you, Chairman. Rob, do you have any concerts booked for 2019?
We have. We just are in the process of awarding a contract to a company called, if you've heard of Red Rock Productions. They moved into the area. They started doing concerts in 2017. So they've got things going up at the Rush Center, a couple other, I think, Menominee Nation. They've done a couple of them, including Ario and just Bad Company recently. So those are the folks that have been putting that on. So they did put in a submittal for the RFP that we put out. We are prepared to contract with them. They have submitted a document that would indicate that they have, and we're not able to hold them to this, 2 large concerts and 3 second-tier, smaller type events, not concerts necessarily, but events of their liking that could include, they had a range of events like ninja warrior type exhibitions, quite inventive, but it wasn't all just concerts. So a lot of this is right now conjecture. We are sitting down with them next week to kind of pin this down, to actually get the contract signed, and we'll know more then.
Thank you.
Supervisor Ellis, seeing no other questions, that'll complete. Thank you very much, Director Way.
You bet.
So moving on to the next agenda item, which is another update. It's an update from our Corporation Counsel, Mary Ann Miller, in regards to a question that came up during the budget session about county executive authority.
Thank you. Just to give some background, probably earlier this fall, a couple of board members had come and basically asked me about an opinion regarding the county executive's authority. And at that time, I had provided some people, and I can't remember anyone other than Supervisor Egan, because I remember walking up to the front of the room, a copy of the pertinent statutes in 59. 5917 specifically provides, and it's directed to the county executive, and I quote, "The county executive shall be the chief executive officer of the county." It goes on to say, and I quote, "The duties and powers of the county executive shall be without limitation." And then it goes on to talk about coordinating and directing all administrative and management functions of the county government. And it basically gives the county executive significant authority. During the budget meeting, as you all recall, perhaps, Supervisor Albrecht asked for an opinion and then had indicated that he would like my office to contact the Attorney General for an opinion. I responded to him and said, well, I'd like to speak with my my predecessor, given the fact that he was in the office for 30-odd years, and what was the past practice. So I contacted Attorney Bodner, and his first reaction was, well, if you go to the Attorney General, you're going to be lucky if you get an opinion in a year. And I have addressed it, and apparently his opinion to the board was that it is basically the board passes legislation and it is up to the county executive to decide when to spend the money. So then what I did was I followed up by going to the Wisconsin Counties Association to see if they could give us an opinion. And I have not heard from them, but they're aware of the question, and that's basically where things stand.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on down, before we go into zoning reports and ordinances, just one thing. We do have some soda and water still available from after the budget session, so just want to let you know, if you're thirsty during the session, please, it's in the back for anyone at any time. So moving on to the zoning reports and ordinances. First one is zoning report number 1, Susan Marks, Town of Winnebago. I'll call on Supervisor Snyder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the adoption of report number 1.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? And we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to amendatory ordinance number 1101-2018, rezoning to R1 rural residential for tax parcel number 030-0204-05 and 030-0204-06. I'll call again on Supervisor Schneider.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, I move for the adoption of a mandatory ordinance number 1101-2018.
There's a motion. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next report, and that is zoning report number 02, Tony Welnicki, Town of Poygan. I'll call on Supervisor Joas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the adoption of report number 2 for Tony Welnicki.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to amendment ordinance number 110218, rezoning to R1 rural residential for tax parcel number 0200138-02. Once again, call on Supervisor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the adoption of a mandatory ordinance number 110218.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next item, which is a mandatory ordinance number 11032018. Town of Clayton, on behalf of Mike and Joni Hines, rezoning to R1 rural residential for tax parcel number 006-0531-03-02. I'll call on Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of a mandatory ordinance number 1103, 2018.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next item, which is a mandatory ordinance number 11042018. Town of Winchester, on behalf of Thomas and Ruth Zelmer, rezoning to I-1 light industrial for tax parcel number 028-0671. I'll call on Supervisor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the adoption of a mandatory ordinance number 11042018.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next item. That is a mandatory ordinance number 11052018. Town of Winchester, on behalf of Richard Hansen, Revocable Trust, rezoning to I-1 light industrial for tax parcel number 0280663-05. Once again, I'll call on Supervisor Joyce.
Thank you. I move for the adoption of a mandatory ordinance number 1105, 2018.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next item, and that is item mandatory ordinance number 11062018. Town of Oshkosh, on behalf of Dan Dowling, rezoning to M1 Industrial for tax parcel number 018-0083-01 and 018-0083-03. I'll call on Vice Chairman Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the approval of mandatory ordinance 11062018.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? And all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next item, and that is a mandatory ordinance number 11072018. Town of Oshkosh, on behalf of Don Herman, rezoning to B1 Business for tax parcel number 018-0083-03. I'll once again call on Vice Chairman Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the approval of a mandatory ordinance 11072018.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the final item, and that is a mandatory ordinance number 11082018. Town of Clayton, on behalf of Chris Lichtenberg, rezoning to A2 General Agriculture for tax parcel number 006-0331-04. I'll call on Supervisor Youngquist.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval for mandatory ordinance number 11082018.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? And all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So that concludes the zoning reports and ordinances. So we'll move the resolutions and ordinances. first one is resolution number 078-112018, commendation for Gerald Wolfgram. I'll call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of resolution number 078-11-2018. In June 1998, after serving as a U.S. Marine and then working for over 40 years in private industry, Gerald Wolfgram began his service to Winnebago County as a part-time bridge tender. In 2006, he began working full-time during the navigation season. Gerald provided an excellent level of service to people who traversed the Winnie County Bridge. This was the oldest lift bridge in the county, and Gerald responded to the frequent need for repairs with professionalism and good communication. He could always be counted on to have a positive attitude and offer to help in any situation. We wish Gerald the best in his well-deserved retirement.
There was a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the second resolution, which is resolution number 079-112018, commendation for Linda Stokert. I'll call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you. I move for approval of resolution 079-11-2018. Linda Steckert began her 38-year career with Winnebago County in 1980 as a custodian one in what was then called the Maintenance Department. She worked very hard at keeping the buildings she was assigned to clean, orderly, and attractive. Linda's dedication and commitment to Winnebago County has been outstanding. She was an asset to the county and will be greatly missed. Please join me in expressing our gratitude for Linda's 35 years of service and best wishes for her future in retirement.
There was a motion and a second for the commendation of Linda Stokert. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the third resolution. That's resolution number 080-112018, commendation for Eileen Buchanan. I'll call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you. I move for resolution number 080-11-2018. Eileen Buchanan retired from Parkview Health Center on November 1st after 27 years of dedicated service. Eileen started out in the nursing department as a CNA and in 2007 transferred into the housekeeping department, first as a room attendant and then transitioned into the custodian role. Throughout her employment, Eileen was very dedicated to the residents she served and was always willing to assist her coworkers. Please join me in expressing our wholehearted gratitude for Eileen's years of service and best wishes for her future in retirement.
There was a motion and a second for a commendation for Eileen Buchanan. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the fourth resolution. Resolution number 081-112018. Disallow claim of Adam Kuborn and Joseph and Nancy Kuborn. I'll call on Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of resolution number 081-11-2018.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Then all those in favor say aye. Aye. I apologize. I did see one call in. It's Supervisor Defferting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was looking at this report, and I have to say that the statement here brought by the Kuborn's attorneys, and I was very appalled. I found it to be very embarrassing, and it seems to me that there is an impending lawsuit right now against the city of Oshkosh Police over this particular incident. It appears to be that he was in Winnebago County Jail for a couple of hours. And I'd like to thank Sheriff Motz for getting in touch with me and providing me with some information on this, because I wanted to know a little bit more about this whole incident. And it appears to be that he was in the jail for about 2 hours, I believe, until from close to midnight till about almost 2 o'clock in the morning. But I have to say that this was certainly appalling to read. It appears to be that they They arrested the wrong person. There was not even anything here to fit the description. And the only reason why I am choosing to vote to disallow this is because right now I'd like to know a little bit more about this, and I'll guess we'll have the legal process go to work and have this be tried in a court of law. But I have to say that I was not very happy upon reading this statement by their attorneys.
Thank you, Supervisor Deffling. So we'll do a voice vote once again. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next resolution, which is resolution number 082-112018. Authorize the transfer of $186,900 from the Winnebago County undesignated general fund account to the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department capital outlay account for the purpose of upgrading the commander control stations and PLC processors. I'll call on Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move approval of resolution 082-11-2018.
There's been a motion. Please.
We recently had a presentation by the sheriff. Our committee has looked at this in detail, and it really is a matter of the locks don't work. The automatic lock system doesn't work in the jail. And we need to fix that, obviously, for the good management of the jail and for the safety of the staff that works there. It's really a simple issue. We need to do this.
Thank you, Supervisor Wingren. Any discussion? I'll call on Supervisor Deffling.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a question in regards to how, with the improvement of these locks and with the locking systems, how long is the lifespan in regards to this upgrade? How long are we going to expect to have this particular upgrade?
We upgraded some of the locking system itself about 2 years ago. Went through the process of upgrading a very complex locking system, as well as cameras, as well as a comm logger, which logs when doors are open and closed. And this is the last piece of that, but it is the most expensive piece, and it's sort of the brains of the entire thing. We had hoped that we would get a little bit more time out of it and have it in our CIP. It just didn't happen. It failed on us. Total failure twice, and I believe 8 times we have had partial failures. And what happens is that we lose the ability for the deputy to push a button. The camera comes up from our control center, and they can see who to open the door for. That door opens, it closes behind them, then another door opens. It's a double security that we're required to have. I know I didn't answer the question yet, but we got 15 years out of this particular integrator system. I can't guarantee 15 years, but I'm hopeful. That is quite a lifespan, actually, for hardware, software to last that long.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Deffling, and thank you, Sheriff Motz. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and do this by a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next resolution, which is resolution number 083-112018. Authorize execution of airport agricultural permit between the Experimental Aircraft Association and Winnebago County. I'll call on Supervisor Singstock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to approve resolution number 083-11-2018.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? And we'll go ahead and do this by a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next resolution, which is resolution number 084-112018. Authorize 5-year cooperative service agreement between Winnebago County and the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources and the United States Department of Agriculture, Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, and Wildlife Services. I'll call on Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the approval of Resolution 084-11-2018.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll once again do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next resolution, and that is resolution number 085-112018. Authorize Winnebago County to request increased funding and oversight reforms for Wisconsin's Child Protective Services System. I'll call on Supervisor Norton.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 085-11-2018.
There's a motion and a second to adopt. Any discussion? I'll call on Supervisor Shorsey.
As I look at this, it's a general, kind of a general statement. Do you have any data about how this is impacting Winnebago County?
Defer to, I think I saw Bill Topol in the back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Topol is in the back, please. Dr. Topol?
Yeah, just a little bit of orientation. The Wisconsin County Human Services Association, Wisconsin Counties Association together worked on this study for over the last year, and we're all recommending that each county take a look at this and choose to support the resolution or not for the extra funding. In regard to what they found that nationally the norms of workers to families, or families to a worker ratio should be around 10 families to one worker in Child Protective Services, and about 5 workers to one supervisor. And where we stand is we're pretty close in the area of families to worker. We're in some units we're 9 or 10 to 1, we're right on. Other units we're a little bit larger, 12, 13 families to 1. So we would use the money if the legislature puts it into their budget, because that's the request, that they would put money into the budget. We would use our portion of that to try to add some additional staff to get us to the 10 to 1 staffing ratio. On the supervisor side of 5 workers to 1 supervisor, we are about double that. So we have about 10 workers to 1 supervisor. So we would have a longer way to go on the supervisory front than on the worker front. But if we were successful in getting this money, the money that we would get would be sufficient to help us get to those targets.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey, and thank you to Director Topol. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and do this as well by a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the next resolution, and that is resolution number 086-112018. Support H.R. Bill 54-29, Siren Act of 2018. I'll call on Vice Chairman Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the resolution of 086-11-2018.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll call on Supervisor Defferting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I intend to be voting against this one simply because I'm a little concerned in regards to the centralization of power in regards to the federal level and the state level. I think that emergency services should be, a county role, and once we give them, once we accept grant money from them, they start pulling the strings, and I'm concerned about that precedent. So I will be voting against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Defferting. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and once again do this by a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those who vote no? No. There's one no vote, and that motion passes. So moving on down to the next resolution, and that is resolution number 087-112018. Support H.R. Bill 6986, the Nursing Home Workforce Quality Act. I'll call on Vice Chairman Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the approval of Resolution 087-11-2018.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll once again do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on down to the final resolution this evening. That is resolution number 088-112018. Designate November 2018 as Veterans and Military Families Month in Winnebago County. I'll call on Supervisor Warnke.
I ask your approval of Resolution 088-112018.
There's a motion and a second. Please, Supervisor Warnke. Anything?
I just hope that, that you approve this, and I think you will, is to support our veterans, and I don't think I have to go into any stories. We all know about veterans, how some of the things that they go through, and I'm asking for your approval.
Thank you, Supervisor Warnke. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll once again do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So that concludes our business items for this agenda. So I would entertain.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move that we adjourn until December 18th. It's on a Tuesday at 6 p.m.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.